In AutoCAD, everything relates to the origin, and we can see here on my diagram the origin has coordinates 0, 0. So the x value is 0 and the y value is 0. Now what we're going to do is to use absolute coordinates to draw a shape, and when you use absolute coordinates we relate every coordinate back to the origin. So we'll type in coordinates are so many x or so many going across, and y so many going up. In order to use these we need to make sure that our dynamic input is off, and you can see from mine here that the dynamic input is off. So select a line, I'm going to go down to the command line, and for my first point 50, 50, so that should be 50 millimeters across and 50 up. For my next coordinate I'm going to type in 100, so it's going to across 100 on the x and 50 up on the y, which will draw me a horizontal line. For my next bit I need to go across 100 and we're going to go up 100, which will draw me a vertical line. For my next coordinate I'm going to go across 50 and up 100, which will draw me my horizontal line. And then finally I could either use the close command by typing in C, which would complete the shape, but in this case I'm going to continue to use my absolute coordinates, so I'm going to type in 50, 50, and when I hit enter that now draws me my square. For our next drawing we're going to use relative coordinates. With relative coordinates everything is related back to the previous point rather than to the origin. So to demonstrate this we're going to draw a square using relative coordinates. So I'm going to go across to my line command, into the command line, and for my first point I'm going to put 200 across, on the x 200 and up 50, and you can see my first point. Now to tell AutoCAD that you are using relative coordinates, for the next point you need to put in the @ sign. So for this we want to go across 50, but we don't want to go up at all on the y-axis, so I'm going to put that as 0. You can see that's drawing my horizontal line. For my next line, again, we need to use the @ symbol to tell AutoCAD we're using relative coordinates. So from this point, we don't want to go across on the x-axis, but we wish to go up on the y for 50, and you can see that's giving me my vertical line. For my next coordinate, again I've got the @ sign, but because I'm going across from right to left I need to put in negative 50, but I don't want to go up or down on the y-axis. And then finally again I could press the close command, but in this case again I'm going to use the relative coordinates. So for this I've got the @ sign, 0, comma, and because I'm coming down again it's got to be a negative, so minus 50, hit enter, and that completes my drawing of the square using relative coordinates. Another way that we can draw shapes accurately is to use what we call relative polar coordinates. This involves giving a length and an angle. So as before I'm going to start off with an absolute value, so I'm going to go up to my line command, down to my command line, and I'm going to start off with an absolute value of 150, 150, so that's 150 across on the x, 150 up on the y. When I hit enter you can see my first point. Now when we're dealing with polar coordinates what we need to do is to give a length and an angle. So to start off with, what I'm going to do is, because we're using relative we need to use the @ sign. I'm going to go across 50, and my angle, and for the angle we use the less than sign, and it's going to be 0, so I'm going to go across 50 with an angle of 0, and that will draw me my horizontal line. To draw my vertical line I use the @ because we're using relative coordinates, and I want 50, and this time my angle will be 90, which will draw me my vertical line. For my top of the square I've got the @ length of 50, my angle will be 180 degrees, and finally I've got the @ sign, my length is 50, my angle will be 270, and when I hit that I've now managed to draw my square using relative polar coordinates. Finally we're going to draw our square and we're going to use direct input, and this is where we can actually use our cursor to specify the direction and then type in the value that we actually want. For this, I'm going to go down and I'm going to make sure that my dynamic input is switched on, and I'm also going to put on my ortho mode. And remember, ortho will only let me draw either vertical or horizontal lines. So what I'm going to do to start off with, I go up to my line command. I need to specify my first point, so I'm going to use absolute coordinates again. So I'm going to go across 300 and I'm going to go up 300. So when I hit enter, you can see my first point. Now, because I've switched on dynamic input, depending where I put my cursor, so if I start to draw down, you can see the values changing there. So if I'm drawing down, if I wish my line to be 50, I can simply type in 50, hit enter. I now want to go across towards the right, so I literally drag my cursor across the right. I can type in 50, hit enter. The same going up, I'm going to type in 50 and hit enter, and finally the same going across. And note, it doesn't matter how far the line is, it's giving me a measurement of the line, but I can input the value I wish. So if I want that to be 50, enter and hit enter again to confirm, and you can see I've drawn my square using dynamic input or direct input.